we will move to our action agenda. Action 12, action is necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session.
Madam Chair, I have two motions. The first is I move that we approve the selected employment items shown in Exhibit A for action.
Is there a second? Ms. Moore seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And I have a hand from Ms., I see your hand. Thank you. And that's 7-0. So next.
The other item is, I would like to make a motion under item 3G. I make the motion for mental health and mental illness that the superintendent brings to the board a consideration of a therapeutic day program.
Is there a second?
I don't know what that is, but
I
I'll
don't
second
either.
it.
Okay.
We got a second, so would you like to address that?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Today, I was talking with the superintendent and just a one-on-one conversation, and I've been very concerned about discipline, you know, coming back from COVID and how we would address that. We had discussed a number of items, and basically, the superintendent asked me to make this request because he thinks that that the request that I was making was too expensive and too far-reaching. So I will then I don't know exactly all the information on this, but I told him I would make the motion so that he could explain.
So if I'm understanding you right, it's because we all know there's a mental health crisis. I don't think there's anybody going to argue that. And we are finding, and I know we've funded some over the last few years, and I've been proud of this board, but we know it isn't enough. And so I am assuming, and we're
Yes.
going to hear from Dr. Ross.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just put, you know, what I had proposed is that we put a nest in every one of our secondary schools. And that because of the nature of the problems that we're facing, and I've been in a lot of the schools, and everybody to a T tells me that this is unprecedented coming back from COVID, that we have had just different sorts of discipline problems that they've never seen before. So my discussion was with the superintendent about that situation, and he told me that would A, be too expensive, and B, that we would really be hard pressed to make that happen in short order. And so he suggested to me that I ask, you know, for a therapeutic day program, which might be a lesser expensive and easier to implement system, and I'll turn over the floor to him.
I think I have to do that. Okay, Dr. Ross, you're on. You know, I think every person sitting here is very anxious to hear anything we can do to improve the mental health of our students.
And without violating, so I'm going to ask Dr. Harris to cut my mic if I get outside the lane here. But without violating any FERPA or civil rights situation, we are dealing with a variety of matters when we talk about student discipline. So the nest is something that we believe will help in some of our highest offensive areas. Staffing one of those at every school is going to be almost impossible. However, we are going to bring to you what you have already approved, which is the Foundations program. And this is, we were calling it a nest, but it's really an academy for success for the elementary. Dr. Harris is going to do a presentation for that. There are students that even in the Foundations and the Academy for Success, a very small top tier, where there is a severe need for mental health and mental illness treatment. These are students who are dealing with issues that pose challenges. And I would like, and so as we discussed this, the question was, could we put on the table just a discussion of, and let us present a proposal with Dr. Angie Slatton, working with Dr. Harris, for what would that look like? Foundations for the elementary school, Academy for Success for the middle and intermediate, and then for the highest need students suffering from issues with schizophrenia or whatever those may be, the number of beds that are out there to service these students becomes very small. What would that look like if School District 5 held one therapeutic day program to get those students of those highest needs? And so I would be, with this, you don't fund it, of course, but this releases the administration through Dr. Harris and academics with Dr. Slatton to build one. He's already building one for the elementary. He'll be doing a presentation in either October, I believe, on foundations. I thought so. Did we not talk about? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, he'll be doing a presentation on foundations. We said November. I'm sorry. And but we would like to also do one for a conceptualization of a therapeutic day program. Dr. Harris, is there anything you'd like to say about the foundations right now? I know we're not at that point, but its design and its intent.
No, thank you for even having conversation and continuing to keep that conversation alive. It is a concept foundations that certainly our elementary schools, as we have talked over what seemed like some time now, that they really do feel very strongly about that we do need a different kind of and another level of intervention at the elementary level. So we are certainly very encouraged by the idea that we will have such an option available to support our students under this Foundations Academy.
And then for the motion that's on the table now, Therapeutic Day, is those total wraparound services from those professionals for some of the most severe cases that we in the schools are struggling with.
And I think, like you said, the key word in the motion is consideration, so that they can put it together and look at the funding and bring it to us. That's exciting. Okay, any questions? Okay, Ms.
Do you
Gardner?
mind just rereading the motion? for me?
I will. It was, I make the motion for mental health and mental illness that the superintendent brings to the board for consideration a therapeutic day program. Is that good? All those in favor? And that is 6 and no opposed. Thank you. We're moving right along. Thank you, Dr. Ross. See, you and Mr. Lovelace been thinking. We are at number 13. Second and final reading of proposed revisions to Board Policy GBGBA, weapons. And we are happy to have Ms. Mahoney with us, who's our expert in this. And we will, however you'd like to go about it, we can let
I'll let,
her, you decide, Dr.
yes.
Ross, how you want to
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have with us Attorney Kathy Mahoney to help. We had our first reading of the policy. We made some changes based on the recommendation from Ms. Gardner and the board. Just want to share how those changes will be made and answer any questions we would have from the board.
Okay.
We also have in attendance 2 of our safety officers, or 3. Cato's here. Oh, I did not.
He's hiding. He's hiding.
That was a total mistake. We have our safety officers here so that if there are any questions for them, but these would be the only 3 that would be allowed to conceal carry under this policy. And so they are here as well for any questions.
Ms. Mahoney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Seems a little bit far from me. I guess I'm kind of short. Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Ross, and members of the board. We went over this policy, I think, in greater detail during the first reading. It's actually very appropriate, and I feel very safe that our safety officers are right here. Because I think there was some sort of misunderstanding, perhaps, in some of the reporting about this, that the district was arming staff, which is exactly not what the district is doing.
Yes.
This is a very narrow and very defensible, strong policy that very clearly says, consistent with the state law that permits this authority, the board authorizes the superintendent to grant express permission to safety officers employed by the district. And we even narrowed it very specifically to make sure this isn't just anyone, and that is that they are either current or former certified Class 1 law enforcement officers and also have a concealed weapons permit or equivalent law enforcement credential as set forth in state or federal law to possess the firearm on district property. So this is consistent with the law. It's a very narrow granting of exception, and it's easy to do when you're picturing the 3 safety officers that you're talking about. These are very well-known gentlemen in the district who've got a great track record here, and these are individuals that you're basically helping them, helping their safety is how I would add it. But it's very narrow and very specific, and so there just don't be the confusion that all staff are going to be running around with guns, because that's obviously not the intent here. This is very narrow for very established and very excellent prior law enforcement officers with great background and experience. So there was one sentence taken out, just to clarify that the law, while the law might apply, it's not in the policy. And then the rest of the changes were all to kind of tweak the definition of firearms and weapons, et cetera. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Ms. Moore.
I'd first like to say that I trust all 3 of these to protect my children. They do a fabulous job, so thank you for what you do. You touched on it, but I just wanted to reiterate again that it is solely these 3 gentlemen we see in front of us. This has nothing to do with an SRO shortage or having, the new company. It is solely these 3 gentlemen that are standing in front of us that this is going to cover.
Correct, yes. It says 2 safety officers employed by the district, and it even goes further that the expectation is those safety officers 10 years from now would still need to be, or 20 years from now, hopefully you'll be here forever, but at whatever point there are different individuals in that position, they need to be current or former certified Class 1 law enforcement officers. And law enforcement officers know what that means. That means they've got the experience and the expertise and the background and the skill set. And then they have the added benefit of being with the district for so many years, because it's a mixture of law enforcement and also knowing how schools work. Mm-hmm. So this is very narrow, and it's very tied to these gentlemen or subsequent individuals who would have the great qualifications that they have.
To piggyback on Ms. Moore, it was misfortunate that was, I think especially several, mainly the state paper, got it, I think they tried to sensationalize and was trying to say, we're arming employees, which was so not true. And I think we did get a letter saying they were sorry to misread what our actual policy was. So I appreciate you making that point. I like what you told me, where it's an extra layer of protection for our children. It's just one more, they're SRO officers, and then where there is that shortage, we have the security a company covering that. But these guys are just on top of that. So I think it's very smart of Dr. Ross and his staff to bring this to us. And it makes me feel better for our kids, just like Ms. Moore said. Mr. Hogan.
Dr. Ross, is the district going to be providing firearms to these individuals? Or are they going to bring their own? I mean, how's that working out? And
Dr. Harris?
Oh, you don't know that.
Mr. Hogan, in that this is a district, hopefully will be a district-approved initiative, then that would be something that the district would support in terms of the equipment to support this effort.
Any other questions?
follow up, just with that, I guess, supporting of the equipment, is that going to be, we're going to track them like Chromebooks and just keep a watchful eye on them under the careful control of these three individuals? Are we going to, I mean, I guess, my question is, we have three individuals that potentially could be permitted to carry a firearm out of school. We're going to provide 3 guns, one each individual, and they're going to be trained on that firearm, and they're going to be, basically that's going to be their tool, correct?
That is correct. They will be equipped, the plan is that they will be duly equipped with the weapons, the safety gear, and all that goes along with, in terms of what we call tactical uniform. In addition to that, that would be an annual and a regular qualification and qualifying criteria that they would have to continue to meet. All of the things that they would to maintain the individual and personal certifications that they have, but also that which meets the, what we hope to be an approval of this policy.
I think Ms. Gardner's next.
So the policy specifically says firearms, so would there be other, I hate to call it restraining or weapons type things that they would be wearing with I don't know what our SROs carry around specifically. I haven't really detailed it very much. We do have one in the back that could show us, but are there other things besides firearms that,
He could be a model.
yeah?
Well, I would like to clarify that this is not putting them in a law enforcement officer role.
Right.
It is simply possessing the firearm, because otherwise, under law, they would not be permitted to possess it. So this does not make them acting as law enforcement officers. It's just simply authorizes them to expressly possess them. But they still, the policy says, consistent with law, they can't display, brandish, or threaten, that sort of thing. So it's a possession issue.
Yeah, but I just wanted to know if there were other weapons involved in that. It was just firearms.
At this, we have just the firearm and again, the body armor that would support that.
Is that good, Mr. Lovelace?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was at, this is not directly to this subject, but I was at one of the elementary schools in Lexington County this week, past week, and they were very happy with the security guard that they had. He has fit right in with them. I wanted to ask Dr. Ross one more time so the public could know, are those security guards as well as our SRO, our normal SROs, are they armed? And would you comment on that?
They are armed, they are qualified. Dr. Harris, if you wanted to add anything that I've missed there.
Yes, sir. Mr. Lovelace, as you can see, one of our stellar SRO, school resource officer from Dutch Fork High School, Officer Salters there in the back, and we appreciate him so much, as well as the others who are armed. However, the 5 that we have contracted with under Security Solutions of America at the individual elementary schools where there was a shortage, if you will, of the Lexington County officers, they too are armed, and we have had great support and partnership with SLADE in order to support us in those efforts.
Good, yeah, that was good to clarify that for the public. Yes, okay, I'll come down. Ms. Huddle and then Ms. Moore.
I've had, obviously, some people ask about this and why we need it, and I'm assuming, but I thought I should ask that our 3 security leaders are kind of in the area. In other words, if you're assigned to the Irma cluster, that you're kind of in that area as opposed to up in Chapin. So if something happens, you can get there faster potentially than other law enforcement. But I want to, is that an accurate portrayal or not?
Let me start by offering this, that they are, if you may recall, how we've assigned them in terms of responsibility of the 3 geographical areas, Chapin High School, Dutch Fork, and Irmo. And so to respond, these gentlemen are standing, if you don't mind, I'd like for them to give you a response as to how and why that is important, that they are able to support this effort here.
We are in our schools actively every day, a bunch of them. If it's not at the high school, we're at the elementary school, we're popping around, so we're always there. Our deal is we're active shooter trained. We did this with Lexington County and Richland County, and we've been trained in this for quite a few numbers of years. We're partnered with our law enforcement partners here. They know that we're going to be carrying and what we're going to be wearing and who we are. They also know if we're in a school and an active shooter begins, we will respond to it immediately. Mm-hmm. Now, if we're off school grounds, we're going to let law enforcement do what they do, and we're going to stay out of that. But if we're on the school grounds, we will actively engage the intruder.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Or he spoke for everybody? Good spokesman. Would you? We want you to have the opportunity if you'd like to. Okay, well, good.
Unless there's any questions, I appreciate y'all considering this, and we look forward to, like Cato said, partnering with these law enforcement officers. I think this is a great opportunity that will add another layer of security.
That's right.
And I really think all the schools within our different clusters, Irmo, Chapin, and Dutch Fork, they're looking forward to it. I think they're really on board with it. So I appreciate y'all's consideration.
And I had a question from, might have been Channel 19, but they were asking me, like, in the day, kind of like your question, Ms. Huddle, but in a regular day, you know, where are those 3 security guards? And I thought that was the answer, that you moved around. So you're in and out of the schools, you know, they know you, and then you can get to the different areas quickly. I think it's a great plan. We're so lucky to have you guys. Ms. Moore? They got your question? Good, good. Anybody else down this way? Anything else?
Okay.
Oh, come on. Oh, yeah, you got to speak too.
Yeah, no problem. We appreciate the opportunity, us being able to be the first line of, a line of defense being on campus is very important. So we've talked about it a number of years, and now it's here, so we're going to embrace the opportunity.
Well, I know that the parents and teachers and students are just happy to know that we have this second layer. You want to talk?
I just wanted to add one more
You
thing.
add, you go ahead.
Again, to the comfort of the community, if you don't know these 3, when we reached out to SLED and Chief Keel, when we reached out to Sheriff Kuhn and Sheriff Leon Lott, they knew all 3 of them by name, and they knew their reputation and the work that they've done already in our community. One thing they have not said, but I think the community should know, they've been in situations where they've responded without protection. And we worried about that.
That's right.
And so without protection, they've ran into situations. And I just want to make sure that we've given them all the tools they need to do, because they have already proven they'll give everything for our children. And so we thank them for that.
We sure do, we sure do.
And Madam
Ms.
Chair,
Yes.
if I could just add, in putting this language together, it was very easy to visualize knowing these gentlemen and what they've done for the district and their experience. It makes the abstract academic aspect of a policy come to play. And that's why we made it very narrow, picturing who was going to be having these firearms, because it's easy when you see the quality that you've got here. We're very lucky to have them.
I so agree. I'm excited about this whole vote. We'll get it to it. And thank you, Ms. Mahoney. You've done us a good job too. We appreciate it. Thank you, guys. I think we should give them a hand. You know, we don't think about the families of our first responders, how they're when they go out every day and protect us, and these guys are protecting our children. And I feel the same about the SRO officers, any first responders. And I don't think we thank them enough. I really don't. Best vote. Oh, go ahead. You got a
Have we
question?
made a motion? Can I make a motion?
Yes.
All right. I move that we approve for second and final reading the proposed revisions to Board Policy GBGBA, weapons as shown in Exhibit D.
Is there a second? Ms. Huddle seconds. Any other discussion? I'll let everybody laugh. And that is 6 and no opposes. We did it. 14, second and final reading proposed revisions to Board Policy GCC, professional staff leaves and absences, Exhibit E. Do I?
Chair Hammond, members of the board, Dr. Ross, the proposed revisions to Board Policy GCC, professional staff leaves and absences, removes the reference to the Terry program. As you may recall, the Terry program was repealed in 2012, and that repeal took effect on July 1st, 2018. The administration recommends that the board approve the second and final reading of the proposed revisions to Board Policy GCC, professional staff leave and absences, which removes the sections that reference the Terry program.
Okay. So we want to have a motion, and then we'll discuss it, because I think we. Go ahead, Nick.
I move that we approve for second and final reading the proposed revisions to Board Policy GCC, professional staff leaves and absences, as shown in Exhibit E.
Is there a second? Mr. Hogan seconds. Now, any questions? I think we really understood it last time. Mainly, if we're taking out the word Terry.
That's right.
Okay. All those in favor? And that goes 6 to no opposed. Thank you, Dr. Turner. She gets the next one, too. Second and final reading of proposed revisions to Board Policy GDC, support staff Contracts and Compensation, Exhibit F.
This is another proposed revision to remove the section that references Terry. So the administration recommends the board approve the second and final reading of the proposed revisions to GDC, support staff leaves and absences, removing the references to the Terry program.
Right. And I think we've talked about one. Anybody want to make a motion? Go ahead.
I'll do it.
We're moving along
All
here.
right. I move that we approve for second and final reading the proposed revisions to Board Policy GDC, support staff contracts and compensation shown in Exhibit F.
Is there a second? Ms. Huddle seconds. Any questions? Again, it's the Terry question. Then we will vote. All those in favor? And that is 6 and 0 opposed. Number 16, second and final reading of proposed revisions to Board Policy GCB, professional staff contracts and compensation, Exhibit G.
This is another removal of the reference to Terry. So the administration recommends that the board approve the second and final reading of the proposed revisions to Board Policy GCB, professional staff contracts and compensation, which removes the section that references the Terry program.
Is there a motion? Ms.
Last one,
our
last time.
Policy person, you
This
go
is my
ahead.
last time.
Ms. Policy.
I move that we approve for second and final reading the proposed revisions to Board Policy GCB, professional staff contracts and compensation as shown in Exhibit G.
Is there a second? Mr. Hogan seconds. Any discussion? See, Dr. Turner did so well last time, and there's no questions. All those in favor? And that is 6 and 0 opposed. And number 17, approval of recommendations on school security, life safety, and HVAC concerns from the Facilities Committee. So is there a Facilities Committee chairman that wants to?
Yes, there is, and Mr. Wiseman is going to, and Mr. Knotts, I think, are going to come up and
Presentation.
give us a little presentation from what we had the other day.
Madam Chairman, board members, Dr. Ross, and members of the community, thank you for allowing us to follow up with our meeting from 30 August. We had a chance to present to the Facility Committee some background and some information about what we're proposing to do in regards to getting a number of big-ticket items out front, identified, coming up with a plan so how we can look at a replacement plan or a maintenance plan on a number of things. We're going to, toward the end, we're going to specifically talk about HVAC, but I just want to talk about the overall program, and then Alan Knotts is going to talk to you about the HVAC system that we're looking at using. So life safety, as you heard Dr. Ross talk about, covers a lot of areas. I'm just going to talk about specifically from security. Those are, to me, the items that I'm focusing a lot of attention on. It is a lot more than just having cameras in the school. It's a lot more than just having secured doors. There are other issues that we have to address to make sure that the facility itself is not only safe, but it's secure. You know, Dr. Ross talked about the egress, but we also have to talk about the entrance into the schools. We had a conversation with a school today, and they were talking about the rocks that were by the door in order to let people in. I've gotten into the habit of taking those and leaving little notes so that we can address those issues, because it is an issue of how we get people back in from the kindergarten playgrounds when they get back into the school, whether a card reader is most effective or other items that we have to look at to get kids back into school safely, and then the door locks automatically behind them. Those are just some of the things that we identified. One of them was trees growing up in front of cameras, making sure that we understand that we need to keep our security system up and running and go back and prune the trees and look at where our cameras are so we can make sure that we're making smart decisions about what we're doing in those areas. Technology, as Dr. Ross alluded to, there's a whole lot of folks on the internet at the same time, but one of the things that Mr. Lovelace had talked to me about earlier was how we tie all of our systems in, our alarm systems, our fire systems, our security systems, and even our temperature control systems. We're realizing it is a challenge when we go back and look at some of the older systems that go back to, I want to say the 1900s, but 1992, 93, 94, may not be able to tie into the technology of the 2002. So we have to go back and look at those. And as we go back and upgrade specific systems from bell systems to alarm systems, making sure we can tie that in with future technology. Somehow there's got to be a way that we can tie it in and ideally link the security, the fire alarms, the bell systems, and the announcement systems together. HVAC, again, we're going to go into a little bit further detail, but one of the things that we want to do is pattern a program of identifying and maintaining and repairing certain systems, and in some cases, replacing systems. That big book on the desk that I didn't want to carry up here is what we're doing with the roofing system. We've identified all the roofs. We have a timeline on how that's going to be replaced. I will not take credit for it. That was here before me. But it's a good pattern or a good storyboard, if you will, how we need to do this. Identify, look at future warranties, look at replacement systems. We talked to some of the HVAC contractors out there, and one of the questions I had was, if we repair a roof, is it better to replace the HVAC system first and then repair a roof? But it was just the opposite. It's better to repair the roof and then put the HVAC system in there. So those are the little details that we have to iron out so we understand going forward what we need to do. Oops. Facilities, playgrounds is a big interest in regards to, we talked about the communities also use the playgrounds not only when we're in school, but on weekends, but also during the summer. We want to go back and make sure we have a identified playground repairs before school starts and get a system in place so that we're repairing things prior to the start of school or during the summer. ADA, it is more than just the ramps and the list that we have. There are a lot of ADA requirements that we're becoming knowledgeable with. We understand a lot of them, making sure that we have wheelchair access in our crosswalks, making sure that our hallways are accessible, even making sure our door handles. That particular door handle was regard to a system or a situation where a student, a elementary, a pre-K student could not open the door. One, they couldn't reach it, but two, because it's round, they couldn't grasp it strong enough to open the door. So we're going to go back and look at specifically door handles and those type of things to make sure that we meet ADA requirements. More importantly, it's also a safety security issue if someone has to get out of the school. And grounds maintenance. We will be rebidding, or our grounds maintenance contract is up in October, so we're going to go back and look at that. Trying to figure out how best to address specific issues during seasons and, of course, during the summer. Do you let the grass grow a little bit longer instead of cutting it during the summer as much as we do? But the other thing is making sure what we put on the ground doesn't interfere with how we maintain the system. And it could be some simple things that we have to address. We want to beautify, we want to make things pleasant for our students, but also those things in the long term, if not cared for properly, become a hindrance to our ground maintenance. So we want to address those issues and try to figure out an appropriate response to that. One of the particular things up in the top left corner, you'll see that pipe. Grounds crew was cleaning lawn, cutting grass around one of the schools, hit that pipe, just happens to be the gas pipe to the generator. Fortunately, it was a weekend, it was outside the school, we were able to respond. We had the fire department come in, not only check outside, but we went inside the school and checked just to be careful. And then the contractor has already made the amends to that, and it didn't cost us anything. They took responsibility for that. And they were on scene as quickly as we were. So some of the things that we're kind of looking at is how long will it take us to put these thoughts and plans in motion? Or how long, once we have a plan, can we start doing some repairs and replacements? We want to focus and try to narrow our timeline on HVAC systems as quickly as possible. We found that that's been a challenge for the last couple of weeks. We've gotten a better response, bringing in some contractors, getting things fixed quicker. So we're going to use that concept and look forward to getting a recommendation from you that we can bring that in and do it across the board with our HVAC systems. And then we're going to go through these processes with each of the areas that we're addressing. Again, Americans with Disabilities Act, some of the things that we're going to be looking at, rooms and equipment, elevators, and of course, the ADA ramps. There are a couple of schools that we've identified that we want to put ramps in, just to make it easier access to the playground areas, so we'll be bringing back a proposal for that also. And you actually approved some of that. We're just going to try to give you a timeline of follow-up to what you've already approved. In life safety and security, you can never not look at anything that you do, and I'm finding out in this particular position, that doesn't impact safety and security in some way. So making sure, and we've already got a bid out to look at the fire suppression systems. They've already done some RFQs, and we're looking here shortly to go back and look at those. We also want to go back and look at what we can do currently with whatever funding we might have available to start our vestibule upgrades. So we've got an idea, or I have an idea that I'm going to present to you about looking at how we can start getting those done here real soon. And then, of course, just the exteriors, the doors, making sure we have a safety program in place for those. And this is Dr. Knotts.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. So this is my third week in being here with the district, and just want to kind of give you all my assessment and a little bit of a timeline of what we would like to do. So, overall, I saw that we did a good bit of work over at our Dutch Fork Elementary School. We had a lot of new HVAC units and LED lighting going into place, which is outstanding. But some of the biggest risks that I've seen is our compliance with our NFPA and also our building codes. And then just the loss of reliability and efficiency within our plant operation equipment. And of course, that's going to add additional cost for us to operate. So like I've mentioned before, Dutch Fork Elementary, we've done a great amount of work there, increasing the lighting systems and the HVAC systems. The areas that we really need to focus on would be the NFPA and the International Fire Code compliance, and then that also to conduct an on-site visit at each school. This will allow us to look at the routes of egress, do a visual and operational check of exterior doors, and then just really to look at the fire alarm system at each facility. Another area, a little closer, I'm sorry. And then another area of attention would be to really focus down on our internal HVAC system, to review the electrical system, and then to develop a replacement plan for all of our equipment that's end of life. And then lastly would be the roofing systems. As David mentioned before, we do have a plan outlined, but we need to also ensure that we are doing the proper maintenance to uphold the warranty for those roofs. So if we're going to be covering the overall schedule that I had developed for the district. So as of last week, we really wanted to start looking at the testing inspections for our fire life safety systems for all of our schools. I currently have all that documentation. I'm in process of reviewing it. And then we move down to the on-site visits, and then really focusing on establishing the HVAC preventive maintenance contractor. And then as we move toward the end of the year, ensuring that if there is some mitigation factors that we need to correct some of the life safety deficiencies, that either they are either they're completed or we have a mitigation plan in place. And then come December, we want to review more items. So our next steps are currently in place. We're going to be reviewing all of our NFPA, IFC, and state compliance requirements, and then start with the on-site visits, and then the internal plant equipment is review exactly what we have, get a status of it, see exactly what's end of life. And there are some pieces of equipment that are no longer supported with parts, and then submit an RFP for our roofing system inspections. The goals for the next meeting would be to provide updates on areas that needed attention, have a better understanding of our computerized maintenance management system, and then also to develop goals and objectives for 2023. That's all I have.
Thank you. Just to kind of caveat to that, I pulled one of the just a partial list of the Chapin High School HVAC systems. We have systems all the way from 97 to 2016. So that's the information, the details that we're looking, the tonnage, the year, the manufacturing. We're finding out in some cases when you have to order parts from Europe, especially this time, it takes a lot longer. So we're trying to identify workarounds. Is there off-the-shelf equipment that we can buy to replace it to get it up and running, and the cost versus the length of time that would work for that particular system. It's just a daunting task when you're looking at 3,700 systems, but we have a lot of the data already. It's just now going through there and analyzing it and figure out what's best, how we're best going to come up with the plan. Again, one of the things we're asking that you allow us to look at a vendor to bring in to help analyze that, so that we can better serve that particular program with that particular data, and look at a better way to come up with a system to replace and repair and maintain the systems.
I think it's really great that we have a plan, and I appreciate the hard work you've done. I know in the Facilities Committee, you presented this, and I'm glad the whole board got to see it. Do we have a motion on this?
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to make the motion, and then I've got some things to say from the Facilities Committee that we learned. Okay, I make the motion that the board approves the district to solicit a third-party inspector to evaluate HVAC systems across the district, to recommend a plan of action for HVAC upkeep, repairs, prevention, and replacements.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, Mr. Hogan, second. Any discussions? I think we've had that, but any questions, Ms. Huddle?
We had a maintenance contract that expired, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So we're essentially replacing, and we may change it, but
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
not, this is not totally new.
Yes to both.
Right.
We're going to make some changes in it, and we're going to replace it. Yes, ma'am.
Since I introduced a motion there,
Wait a
but
minute, if you don't mind, let me just see if there are any questions. Any questions? Okay.
I need to introduce the motion. I'll make some points here. We looked at it, and we, just in a rough thumbnail sketch during the meeting, and said if it were 15 years of life of expectancy for a piece of HVAC equipment, that would mean that based on, some 400 square feet a ton, that we would have about 638 tons of replacement every year. Okay, so tons of air conditioning. So that, depending on whether those air conditioning systems were 6 or 10 tons or whatever, it's somewhere between 66 and 100 units that we'd be replacing a year. Okay, so when you look at that, our budget for air conditioning, right now would be somewhere around, just to plug and replace, about $3 million a year that we were going to be placing, constraints on our budget. All right, just this year with inflation, we had approved, I think, $12.5 million for our total maintenance program for roofs, air conditioning, everything. And just this year with 8% inflation, that means that $1 million of that has gone to inflation, 1 million of our 12.5. So looking at that, that means that that we need to consider the fact that our budget is going to increase because we have not been replacing in the prior years. Some of those units, like you said, are 20 years old, and you can't even get parts for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're looking at some Model Ts, and we need a Ferrari. So anyway, that was the long and short of it. So I wanted to make sure that we all saw the real ramifications of where we are. So anyway, with that said.
I was going to try to make that a little bit more pleasant to understand, sir. But thank you for bringing that up, because part of the importance about the maintenance system is so that we can prolong as much life out of those systems. But it's going to come down to needs to be a strong replacement program.
Right, and there's nothing worse than the teacher and the students in a hot room, or if it's cold and they're not getting the heat. You can't expect learning to go on like we need it to be. So I think any other questions for the gentleman? I think we can put this to a vote. All those in favor? And that is 6 with no opposed. And we thank you so much for that.
Thank you for your
hard work.
time.
That's so important, the maintenance. Mr. Hogan, guess what's on the discussion agenda?
I'll take this one, Chairwoman Hammond. I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second? Ms. Moore, seconds. Is there any discussion on the discussion item? All those in favor? Woo-hoo. And it is 6-0. Motion carries, and we are adjourned.